Yep, it's 2.
Roll call.
Palermo. Yes. Festerson.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Jerem.
Here.
Melton. Here. Pauls. Here. Mr. President.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing today for our invocation by Councilmember Pete Festerson. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I just wanted to acknowledge this is the last City Council meeting of 2018. So I want to take the opportunity to say happy holidays to everyone and to your families. And I thought I'd share my short Santa Claus wish list with everyone. Number 1 being a 5th precinct and 900 police officers. Number 2 being a new waste contract that's not only efficient but also environmentally friendly and increases recycling across the city. A new $260 million riverfront that we know will start in March. New transit opportunities for folks across the city, including the bus rapid transit that will start coming to formation in 2019. A new housing code, a new approach to substandard housing throughout our city. And last and not least, continued work on our economic disparities throughout the city. These are all things I know we'll be working on in 2019. We wish you also a successful and happy New Year. Thanks.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Omaha City Council. The council thanks you for being here today. As a courtesy to those in attendance, we would ask you to turn off or mute any of your electronic devices. Madam Clerk.
Item 6, a resolution to approve the policy for maintenance of roadways within the city of Omaha.
Public hearing on agenda item number 6 is today. Proponents, please.
Well, hello there. Good afternoon. I have a little laryngitis, so I hope you will bear with me. But council members, we have made a lot of progress in the last 5 years rebuilding our infrastructure, excuse me, within the city of Omaha. Since 2013, we have resurfaced 640 lane miles of road at a total cost of $58 million. My goal is to get as many streets repaired as possible at a price that we all can afford. This applies to unimproved streets too. Approximately 300 lane miles out of the 5,000 lane miles in Omaha, or about 6% of our total streets, are considered unimproved by today's standards. There is no question this is a challenging issue for all of us, but we must take some action. The policy before you today establishes a certain and fair funding source. And I want to repeat, this policy today is about funding. It's about a funding source and establishing that to improve roads that are substandards by today's definition. We will determine the condition of these roads by using a nationally recognized methodology called the PASER rating. That's how we will determine the conditions of our roads. And as you know, that's a scale of 0 to 10. These roads that we are talking about today have deteriorated so significantly that they can no longer be repaired. The policy applies only to streets that are eligible for street maintenance districts or road maintenance districts, and only when the property owners petition to create an SID or an RMD. No one is being forced to accept this policy. And it is not a pothole repair policy. This is a road resurfacing and road reconstruction policy. Currently, there is no cost-sharing policy, and there has never been. Unbelievably, for the past 100 years in the city of Omaha, property owners have been able to create districts, but the burden of the cost was 100% on the property owners. And we have information back to about 1917 where they were creating these districts, but they were paying 100% of the cost. We are asking you to change that. We are asking to approve a policy that will reduce the property owner's expense. Currently, you are awarding city funds on a case-by-case basis. This is not sustainable, and it does not meet the goals of the Citizen Advisory Committee that I appointed. Those goals were, number one, to determine a cost-sharing method, considerations for high poverty areas, selection and prioritization of project locations, and a development of a clear process of communication between the city and the neighborhoods that want to participate in the SIDs or the RMDs. The policy before you today includes recommendations from the advisory group, and as you had asked, they did reconvene and meet again. Plus, it also includes new additional funding sources for low-income households, renters, and including community development block grant funding for certain neighborhoods. The revised policy provides these new options. Number one, residential areas and neighborhood revitalization strategy areas qualifying census tracts that have at least 50% unique owner-occupied housing units may petition for a street improvement district at 100% cost to the city. Currently, $300,000 has been budgeted for 2019. Residential areas in the NRSA qualifying census tracts that have less than 50% unique owner-occupied housing units may apply to the planning department to have an SID included in the city's community development block grant program or their action plan. If that is approved, 100% of the cost of these projects would be covered by CDBG funding. In the 2019 through 2025 capital improvement plan that you all approved last summer, we have allocated $820,000 annually over 6 years, and that comes to about $4.9 million for street maintenance districts and street improvement districts and road maintenance district. But that funding starting January 1st, 2019 is all dependent on a policy being approved. If the policy isn't approved, that funding is not available. Right now, we have over 15 RMD and SID petitions in various phases of the process. Without a policy, the funds will not be available for them. So we really ask for your serious consideration of passing a new policy, a funding policy. This recommended policy would be in addition to other changes that we've already made. We have asked the Nebraska legislature, if you remember last year, to change the state law that would extend the payback period from 10 years to 20 years, all again to make it more affordable to the property owners. Our Citizens Advisory Board also recommended clear communication to the citizens. Last year, we introduced a new option, and that is a website called Omaha Payzer Rating Lookup, and that is live now, and it provides detailed information about unimproved streets. All you have to do on that website is put in an address, and it will give the Payzer rating of that street, and then according to the Payzer rating, it will tell what options are available to the property owners. Payzer stands for Pavement Surface Evaluation and Rating. And like I said before, it is a methodology that is nationally recognized. It's a system that was developed by University of Wisconsin-Madison Transportation Information Center. Payzer uses a 1 to 10 scale that rate the street's condition. 1 equals failed, 10 equals new. You can use this site to view the Payzer rating of unimproved streets, and like I said before, it's live now. The city will provide maintenance and repair on unimproved streets. We do repair and maintain unimproved streets within the city of Omaha with a Payzer rating of 5 or more. Streets rated 4 or lower are no longer maintained due to the severe deterioration of the street. I hear many homeowners with wide-ranging opinions about unimproved streets, and I know you all do too, and how to pay for the needed repair. Many people ask me where the wheel tax and the state gas tax goes. Every penny that we collect from the wheel tax and the state gas tax are, and we are required to be spent on roads or road-related expenses. We now project $22.8 million in 2018 for the wheel tax and about $44 million in the state gas tax. And again, all of that goes to road or road-related expenses. The issue is our needs are so much greater than the revenue coming in. If the city were to pay the entire cost to bring all of these unimproved streets up to current standards, we estimate that that would cost approximately $300 million. That would require a massive tax increase. For example, to schedule the work over 1 year at $300 million, it would require about an 86-cent levy increase in property taxes. And that would exceed what our lid is. That is not a legal or a practical solution. We could also ask voters to pass a bond issue solely for unimproved streets, but a levy increase would still be required every year for the next 20 years to pay the transportation bonds off. I am working hard to reduce the tax burden and not to raise it. So what I am trying to do is get as many streets resurfaced as we possibly can within our current revenue sources we have. As you remember, just a few years ago, we determined we had some extra bonding capacity, and we look at that CIP every year. When we found we had extra bonding capacity, we put approximately $40 million more in our capital improvement plans into roads. So we are trying to make roads much more of a priority than we ever have before. I will admit our roads have been neglected for about 50 years. And some of them have gotten and deteriorated in that time because past administrations and city councils have not made this a priority. A good example I always give is when I was on the city council, I remember in 2010, there was approximately $2.5 million for the year in the budget for road resurfacing. This year, it's over $18.5 million. So we are making it more of a priority. If I could rewrite history, I know we all would. But we can't help what neglect has happened in this city over the past 50 years or so. For those who say this policy is not enough, I would agree, but it's much better than the policy that we have today, which is no policy at all. If I was to say this policy that I'm asking you to approve will address every one of our unimproved streets and get them up to standards, no, it won't, because we don't have the revenue to do it without, as I said before, an enormous tax increase. But this is certainly putting much more of a priority than we have in the past. I do believe this policy provides a fair funding solution for all taxpayers who live on unimproved streets and those who do not. And I ask for your support for it today. Thank you. And I'll be available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Mr. President, members of council, Troy Anderson, Deputy Chief of Staff of the Mayor's Office. I just wanted to build upon the Mayor's comments and kind of tell a little bit of a story about kind of how we've arrived at where we are today. You'll all recall the discussions that were held last year about the draft policy, and that policy was subsequently sent back to committee. And so the draft policy that's before you today is somewhat of a culmination of the comments that we received from you all last fall, as well as comments from the committee. And so I'd like to just point a couple of things that we've included in this version of the policy in response to some of those comments. Specifically, section 1H2, talking about street improvement districts. We had talked about the size of storm sewers. We all agreed on 36-inch storm sewer size. That's been included in this policy. There was also follow-up to those conversations last fall where we did some cleanup and some amendments to remain consistency in our terminology, specifically section 3A3, a lot of references to our city's polarization policy. And so just to reiterate, there are 4 scenarios by which we are considering or proposing cost sharing as it relates to the reconstruction of roadways. Again, not pothole, not maintenance, but this is the reconstruction of these roadways. There are your traditional street improvement district. We're proposing a 50-50 cost share for those street improvement districts. There's the traditional road maintenance district. That's 75% paid by the adjoining property owners, 25% paid by the city. And then the 2 new ones are for those areas of low income. The first one is residential areas in neighborhood revitalization strategy area, qualifying census tracts that have at least 50% owner-occupied housing units may petition for street improvement district at 100% cost to the city. As the mayor introduced, that the monies that are in the CIP for the 2019 year are tied to this policy, and so the $300,000 that's part of that 820 that's allocated to the whole program is specifically for these low-income neighborhoods, and would be funded at 100% cost borne by the city in those owner-occupied housing unit scenarios. The last one that we wanted to throw out there is the availability of community development block grant funding. This is an option that somewhat already exists today, but through the course of the last year, we've really tried to bring this to the attention of council and the community, that community development block grant funding is available for infrastructure construction. We can't use it for the maintenance of roadways, but we can certainly use it for construction of new roadways, which would then free up public-private partnership dollars to build homes rather than the traditional allocation of community development block grant monies for the construction of homes. So this really kind of opens up some new opportunities for redeveloping areas that perhaps we've overlooked in the past. And so the process that we've laid out is simply a reference to the city's community development block grant approval process. Applications have to be submitted. There's a review process, has to meet all federal guidelines, and then subsequently may get included in the city's annual action plan and funded with community development block grant funding. So just wanted to point out a couple of the highlights of the policy in particular, and also will be available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard?
Luis Jimenez, 518 North 40th Street. I'll be honest, I haven't read this, so I don't know if I am a proponent or an opponent. I do want to comment, though, of what I heard the mayor say, and I would remind her that the restaurant tax, the occupation tax, has been a source of revenue for the city for many years. The whole time that the mayor, Gene Stotthart, has been mayor, that has been available. And I don't know how the occupation tax is being used. I want to think that if you're going to apply a tax, it should be predetermined as to how it's going to be spent. I don't think that's the case for the restaurant occupation tax. So I would let me finish my comments, sir. Please.
Well, hold on a minute, because we're talking about now road maintenance. We're not talking about restaurant tax.
I understand. I'm
Okay,
talking about
nor are we talking about any other
sources of
taxes.
revenue for the city. That's what I'm talking about.
Look, I'm not going to be overtalked here.
Anyway.
Let
I'm
me
moving
stop
on.
you for a second. Let me stop you for a second. I am not going to be overtalked here. Understand that. Understand also that we're talking about a road maintenance issue, not taxes, not restaurant tax. I would encourage you to stay on the subject, please.
My next point is that I believe that areas, streets that can be improved by residents will be improved one way or another. If they can, they're going to do it. Places that can't, neighborhoods that can't because of the poverty, they won't, the property owners won't do that because they don't have the available funds. So I'm thinking about this. If you have a 100%, where 100% the property owners have to pay for the street improvement, and you're moving to a 50-50 or what have you, the people that have the money will take advantage of the 50-50, and the people that, those particular people, they may be able to pay the 100%. So this is an advantage for the people that can already pay for street improvements in their neighborhoods. I would just say. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard?
Thank you. My name is, excuse me, Robert Peterson. I'm an attorney with Peterson and Foster Law, and I represent Skyline Ranches Property Owners Association. Here with me is the president of the association and resident Greg Rosenbaum. We've kept everybody from coming down here and screaming and hollering. I submitted yesterday a proposal, or at least the reason for our opposition. I hope everybody had an opportunity to read it, and so I won't try to be real repetitious. But our objection to this is this resolution classifies our streets as non-standard. And by doing that, you automatically say we're going to have to pay for our streets twice. Because Skyline Ranches, well, this is not the only subdivision. I know Greenbrier's in the same boat. We put the streets in 1975, at a time we were under the jurisdiction of Douglas County. Douglas County had the same kind of street regulations Omaha does. We put them in accordance with the requirements of the then existing governmental entity. Omaha was what, 10 miles away from Skyline Ranches? Our streets were maintained by the SID. When we were annexed by Elkhorn, Elkhorn maintained them and did some resurfacing. What I'm hearing today is, well, we got 300 miles of streets that need to be upgraded. And I understand that. But you don't have to upgrade 300 miles of streets in 1 year. We have asphalt streets. We don't have storm sewers. We don't have sanitary sewers. We're an equestrian subdivision. So to talk about paving streets out there makes absolutely no sense. In my opinion, the only thing that makes sense is asphalt. We put it in according to the standards. And when we were annexed by Omaha, I'm going to shorten up some of this because you've read it, but when we were annexed by Omaha, the Public Works Department did an analysis on our streets as to what it was going to cost. They knew what they had, and I'm just going to give you some numbers here. The Public Works study showed that street maintenance projections for Elkhorn was going to be $761,734 a year. And in addition to that, it also showed crack sealing and major street resurfacing, residential rehabilitation would add an additional $113,000 per year. Now, those were the projections based on 2005 numbers. And we've essentially had nothing but potholes being filled out there. That's what we've had since 2005. I think it's grossly unfair to say, hey, we put our streets in according to the standards of the local governing body. Omaha annexes and says, hey, this is what we're going to put for streets. We're going to allocate that for your streets in Elkhorn. And then say, okay, you're going to have to pay for it again. We were specially assessed in 1975, and I've got special assessment schedules here to support that. It isn't like these streets that somebody put in and said, hey, you haven't paid for them. We have. We were assessed for them. The assessments were paid. And we've paid taxes to the city of Omaha since we were annexed. I guess the taxes didn't start till 2007, but we couldn't maintain our streets during the time the annexation became final. My only request as far as this resolution is concerned is that you don't use a broad brush and say all these streets are non-standard, because ours were not non-standard when they went in. We paid for them, and we just want some maintenance out there like everybody else. I mean, people in my subdivision think we're a West Omaha cash machine, and that's not fair. And this resolution is not fair for our streets. I don't think it'll hold up in court. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Peter Gadzinski. I'm the president of the Loveland Neighborhood Association. We're located between 78th Street and 84th Street and Center and Pacific. The Loveland Neighborhood Association opposes the proposed policy for maintenance of roadways as it fails to make explicit reference to the city's statutory authority to improve streets without petition in accordance with Nebraska Statute 14-387 and the City of Omaha Municipal Code as amended to reflect this provision. I won't read the actual law, but it does refer to the city is authorized without petition to order improvements on side streets connecting with such major traffic streets for a distance not to exceed 1 block from such a major traffic street. And the street we're talking about here is Pacific Avenue, which is certainly a major traffic street in our city. By way of background, Loveland was annexed in 1956. There was no deal with the developer. Financier Archibald James Love platted farmland well beyond the city limits in 1922. And of course, he gave his name to the area, dividing field and pasture into residential lots and putting in gravel roads. Many of these original country roads remained unimproved well beyond 1932 when Loveland School was built. Today, 300 students at the school, together with teachers, parents, and residents from Loveland and surrounding communities, must contend daily with dangerous and damaging streets adjacent to the school grounds. These are the 1100 block of South Ridgewood Avenue and the 8200 block of Poppleton Avenue, both of which combine a PACER rating of 0 with high connectivity. So on the new policy, these would certainly be 20s. Ridgewood Avenue is located directly to the east of the school and intersects directly with major traffic street Pacific Avenue. During the past several months, as president of the association, I have repeatedly communicated in person and in writing with the affected property owners along both of these streets, asking them first to sign the Street Improvement District petition required to improve these streets to current standards. They refused. Next, I repeated the process with the Roadway Maintenance District petition. Again, they refused. I believe this negative response reflects 3 factors. 1, rising cost, as you know also well. Also, rental properties along both streets, which account for 42% of taxable linear frontage on Ridgewood and 39% on Poppleton. And I think most importantly, the fact that these shared streets provide substantial public benefit as they serve families from nearby neighborhoods as well as open enrollment students from outside District 66. I would note that 2 SID improvement projects have been carried out in the Loveland neighborhood this past year via the SID process, and for that we thank you. Also, the 2 blocks of Ridgewood Avenue immediately to the south of the 1100 block are scheduled to be brought up to city standards this coming spring of 2019, again via an SID in cooperation with the city. Carrying out work on the 1100 block of South Ridgewood and the 8200 block of Poppleton at the same time would result in increased efficiency and cost savings. Absent leadership from you, from the city, these 2 streets will remain safety hazards for years to come in the absence of, as I say, active city leadership. I therefore urge Mayor Stothert and the City Council to authorize street improvements to the 1100 block of Ridgewood Avenue and the 8200 block of Poppleton Avenue without petition, as permitted by Nebraska state law, and to assess costs on West Side community schools and private property owners. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard?
Hello, my name is Peggy Heck, and I live on Ridgewood Avenue. I am part of the 2-block street that the SID approved, was approved recently, and we are going to get our street improved. I thank the City Council and the Mayor for facilitating that process. I am currently not in favor of the proposed policy. And the reason why is, Peter just eloquently stated our case, is we are adjacent to 2 blocks of substandard streets. And going through the process that you recommend of polling each homeowner and asking for their approval if they would go 50-50. It failed. Partly, it's because the school owns almost 40% of that linear frontage, and they don't have a vote. They don't have a vote, but they own 40, or they are responsible for 40% of that frontage. So that puts us at a disadvantage. Then we have two absent land homeowners, landlords, and they don't want to add to their tax bill. So we, I think, are in a unique situation in that we can't get 100%, or we can't even get 51%. Yet, we have hundreds of parents who drive these 2 blocks, dropping their children off that are 5, 6, 7 years old, that want to get access to the school entrance, and they have to go over these war-torn streets. And it's dangerous. And I just think that maybe if the city tweaked one of their 4 allowances to allow a special situation where you have a block that is accesses a public institution for the greater public good, then maybe the city could see their way to pay for that street. Because we have, and it's rare, we won't have that many cases of a school on an unimproved street. It would be rare. So if you could see your way to either write in a provision that these kinds of situations would be an exception, that I could go for this, or else have the city pay for this. Because again, we have hundreds of parents right off of 80th and Pacific. I mean, we're in the middle of the city, and we have these horrible roads that we can't seem to get fixed. I appreciate that you need a consistent policy, and you need to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. But this is a time where you need to spend the taxpayers' money for the taxpayers and the homeowners' good. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none. Oh, wait,
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. Before I start, I'd like to say words do matter. You know, and what I do say here won't necessarily relate specifically to what the mayor just said, but it does tie in. And it ties into what some of the other opponents have said. So, first of all, I'm not real clear on what a replacement to all previous city policies actually means. It's not spelled out, and this is the first time I've heard of it. I don't have the answers, and I don't fault everybody. However, the words progress and progressive mean 2 different things. The words democracy and republic mean 2 different things. Sometimes they work together, but generally they're opposites. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legislator, I'm not a liberal. I don't have a PhD, but I would like to quote a PhD as to the process of what's going on in these chambers and on these decisions. Posted by Art Robinson as a public opinion piece back on October 30th, and it's titled How to Save Our Nation. Take just a few minutes, and I'll end with
Larry,
that.
we're getting a little far afield here.
I don't think so, sir. This is a civic process.
Yeah.
All right, well, I will resign this podium under public protest. If you would like to do an intervention on me, here's my wrist. Come get me. Thank you very much, sir.
Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, Mayor, would you want some time for rebuttal, please?
Thank you, Councilman. Just a few comments. For those who oppose this policy, I would say that what you are asking is for the City Council to say no to a proposal for the city to partner with the homeowners and pay at least 50% for a street maintenance or street improvement district, or 25% for a road improvement district, or in some areas of the city, 100%, and changing a 100-year-old policy where the homeowners paid 100%, the entitled brunt of the cost. So we're asking to do something different, better than what we have had in place for many, many years. For those who brought up the issue of Elkhorn, I certainly can't change what happened back in 1975 or what happened during the Fahey administration when it was annexed. But I will agree, our streets, and many of our streets throughout the entire city, including Elkhorn, have been neglected and ignored for years. I will not disagree with that at all. So we have a lot of catching up to do. But why say no to this policy and punish all of those others that are even in the queue now? There are 14 or 15 in the queue now that want to partner with the city and want to create a street improvement district and want the city to pay for half of it. Why say reject this and ignore it and punish the rest of those people? I mean, I think that what we are trying to do is offer something fair, something that we can depend on, something that every citizen would know what city's participation would be if they wanted to create these districts. Another thing as far as talking about what was determined during annexation. We do annexations since I've been mayor every summer. You all know the process. And in every area, every SID that we evaluate for annexation, we do look at the number of lane miles of road, and we do calculate the cost of maintaining those roads. We do know the acres of park and calculate the cost of mowing and maintaining our parks. We do that with every annexation we do. We calculate the cost of city services so we know. It wasn't an absolute promise that X amount of money would be spent in each one of these SIDs once they were annexed. It was, these are the cost of city services. And again, in the past, a lot of things that were needed as far as road repair and maintenance weren't done because of financial constraints. And so the mayors in the past and the city councils made other priorities. And so what we are trying to do is offer something that we feel like will help us catch up in the future and is fair for everyone. Another thing, as far as the definition of non-standard streets or substandard streets, we are going to be using the PASER rating and not just a definition, a loose definition of this is substandard, this was standard and met city standards in 1940, this met city standards in 1970. That's pretty subjective. So we are using that PASER rating. And as I said before, it's a nationally recognized methodology to determine the condition of the street. And again, anyone could get on that website and look at, put their address in there and pull up their PASER rating and see how it is rated and what their options are. The other thing I wanted to mention is when we were talking about Ridgewood, that area voted and are moving forward with the SID and spoke in opposition to this policy. But I want to make clear, again, that all of those that are in the queue for those SIDs, the money that is available starting January 1st, 2019 is dependent on this policy passing. If this policy doesn't pass, the money is not available. So I really ask you again to reconsider and to look at the benefits of what this policy will achieve. It's a funding policy, and it's a funding policy for road repair or for road resurfacing and reconstruction again. And it would be considered a funding policy, a different method of funding than we have used in the past. I'll be available for more questions if you have them.
And with that, we close the public hearing. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. I agree there hasn't been a policy to date on this situation, and it is a huge challenge for our city, over $300 million worth, as the mayor mentioned. I disagree a little bit, though, that it's been handled on a case-by-case basis. I think that since we first entertained such a policy and amended and it was vetoed, that we've actually striven to be very consistent with how we've handled the cases in the meantime that have gone through a very similar process as being described here today. and that is that anyone who made it through that process and petition process was eligible for the 50% cost match from the city. And that's how we've treated everyone that's come to the city council. So it may not have been a formal policy, but I think we have been fair in the meantime, and not just case by case. But having said that, I'm not opposed to a formal policy. I think that is something that is important for consistency to consider. But I do have a few concerns. Mr. Stubbe, I want to talk to you about some of the budget aspects of this for a minute. The CIP going forward does designate $820,000 in transportation bonds for these projects. As has been noted, that's not a very large amount compared to the challenge we know we have going forward. In fact, that probably funds about, even with cost share projects, maybe 4 or 5 projects a year. Would that be an accurate thing to say?
Bob Stubbe, Public Works. So I guess I would say that the majority of the projects, other than Ridgewood Avenue project that we've done, have been somewhere in the neighborhood of about a block long. And so those have ranged, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood to $300,000 to $500,000 to do. So Leavenworth recently that in fact, I think you just assessed the other day, I think was somewhere in that particular neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. So I think we are talking about 4 or 5 projects a year then. And with the component that's been reserved now for areas of poverty, which I appreciate, it's different than the last policy, and I think does better address that concern, but also in a very limited fashion. If that's $300,000, that's probably 1 or 2 projects at most then, if it's covering 100% of a project's cost. That would also be an accurate observation, right?
Yeah, we would anticipate, again, that if it's $300,000, most likely that would be somewhere in the range of probably a block long for a 2-lane concrete street.
So then a concern that comes to mind would be, should a lot of blocks in areas of poverty seek this process, and I would imagine they would, there's a schedule that's been conceived of, so one would apply and one would be considered, and the PASER rating would be applied, and then a priority list would be made. On that schedule, though, doesn't that evaluation then happen every year or as additional applications come in?
I guess in my opinion would be is that if the city is paying 100% of that particular cost, that there wouldn't have to go through a process of creating a district or anything like that. And so if there's multiple requests to utilize those funds, essentially those projects would just remain in the queue. And currently within the policy, there's a way of kind of evaluating with regard to multiple projects, which ones would kind of float to the top from the standpoint of quantity of traffic, condition, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And so it's conceivable, though, if you made it through that process or you're in the queue, you might not always be the first in the queue. You might bump down from time to time, and a concern would be, what happens if you're doing 1 or 2 blocks a year, if you bump down for a long period of time, I would imagine that'd be a pretty frustrating experience.
Again, I can't speak to that other than the fact that, as previously stated, we would look at those projects as being included and wouldn't have to be reapplied. And I guess we would look at it on a regular basis from the standpoint, would there be an opportunity to consider providing some additional funding? And that would be something that we would do on an annual basis when we go through budget and development of the CIP.
Okay. 2 more budgetary related questions. One related to CDBG. So I know our CDBG dollars aren't increasing necessarily, although we had an abnormal year last year, I think, where we had some additional funds we weren't expecting. I don't think there's an amount associated with how much CDBG we'd be putting towards this next year, or is there?
No, really right now it's unlimited. I mean, we have different.
Let me have you come to the mic again, Mayor.
Gosh, I should know this.
Name and address too, right?
Okay, June Southard, 1819 Farnham. No, we did not put an amount with CDBG because we don't know the amount we're getting every year, and you are correct. Last year we got more money than we actually thought after we did our budget, so we added it in. You had to amend it. But we have different CDBG projects, and they evaluate them every year to send it to you for your approval. But we kind of felt like we would shift our thinking. rather than us building homes, we would create the infrastructure on these streets, a good concrete street with a sidewalk and storm drains and curbs, and then work with Holy Name or Jesu or Habitat with building the homes. So kind of just shifting our focus away from building the homes to building the infrastructure and then working with our partners to build the home. So it's just kind of restructuring the way we think when we decide and prioritize on what those CDBG dollars will go to.
Okay.
And I think every year it's a little bit different. I think it's around, I see somebody that knows the answer, probably about over 4 million, around 4 million a year of the entitlement funds that are actually community development block grant funding.
And that was part where I was going with that question, is that
You want me
I
to sit down?
appreciate we're trying to,
Are you still asking me questions? or-
maybe just one more,
Okay,
as long as you're there.
Okay.
I appreciate we're trying to get creative with, additional sources of funding here to address this issue.
Mm-hmm.
But CDBG, I know, is a little bit unpredictable and generally is not going up. So I guess
But it has. I mean, it
last
did
year
go
it did,
up.
but
Yeah.
it's always a bit of a roll of the dice with the federal government,
Mm-hmm.
and it hasn't typically been the case that it's gone up. So my only concern with that would be, that money is usually dedicated to housing issues, as you
Right.
noted.
Mhm.
And so is it conceivable if we're diverting money there, we're doing less in terms of housing, or how would you see that playing out?
It's just reprioritizing, like I said. Work our partners with Habitat. We have the land bank now. In taking these areas that some have owner-occupied housing, some are just really streets that Habitat would like to develop, for example, or Holy Name, or some of the other partners that we have to build houses, but the infrastructure is poor. And so, if we do the infrastructure, they do the housing, then you got the whole package. And it really isn't also, I think you brought up before, we talked a little bit about this with 100%, the district, and to Bob's point, it really isn't a district because we create the district to assess for them to pay back. And there won't be any payback because we will be paying 100%. But it's basically a process like creating the RMDs or the SIDs. And if the city pays 100%, we would do concrete. We wouldn't do an asphalt street. It would be something that would last a lot longer and the city would maintain forever.
So they petition and it gets rated, but it's not a process of protest periods and things like that, correct?
Correct.
And rather than just do those streets that we know need to be done, it's the thought is to engage citizen involvement. Is that the thought with that?
Yeah, and I think Troy also is very versed in the discussion that we had about going in that direction. Because I really wanted, like I said before, I wanted to address the concerns that you all brought up, that there are certain areas of town that we feel like can't and never would be able to afford 50% or even 90%. But we still have those areas that have high needs and their infrastructure is not in good shape. So we tried to be creative in a way that we could pay 100%, identify certain areas using certain criteria that would be easy for everybody to understand.
Okay. And maybe the last question, as it applies to the $820,000 in the CIP, the statement's been made that should a policy not be approved, that would not be available for this program of work, I guess. But it is transportation bonds, so that money would still be used for streets. Is that an accurate thing to say?
Well, there are probably in the 6-year capital improvement plan about $320 million worth of street projects in that 6-year CIP. But what we have done is we have taken, and it hasn't been done in the past, we've taken about $820,000 per year for 6 years, which is about almost $5 million. Just to dedicate it to the streets that we are talking about now, those with the lower PASER rating that we want to go in and reconstruct and resurface. Now, we've always had some money in the capital improvement plan for unimproved streets. And the definition of those, though, as you know, are not these streets that have deteriorated beyond their life that we can repair it. But these are streets that have always been in the CIP that are gravel streets that have never been paved. And on those types of streets, we have a program. We do go out there twice a year. We grind them down, we smooth them out, we make sure that the crown is on there so they have better drainage, and we do that twice a year. We're not talking about those unimproved streets. We're talking about the streets, the small percentage of streets that have deteriorated and have that low PASER rating of 4 or below. And keep in mind that we do maintain a lot of the unimproved streets that are asphalt in Omaha that have that PASER rating of 5 or above, and we do that.
Okay. So absent a policy, though, that $820,000 in transportation bonds would not be then be used for substandard streets, but I presume would still be used for streets in some respect.
It would be
has to be,
reallocated.
yeah.
But it kind of defeats the point, or the issue that we have with these streets that we want to get improved as much as we can, and we want to help the homeowners that want their streets improved.
Okay. Thanks.
You bet.
And Mr. Stubbe, one more question, then I'll yield the floor to others that may have questions too. There are, I think, 14 or 15 that were mentioned that are in the queue right now under the kind of the current approach, which has been very similar to this. And I noted earlier, the City Council has been consistent in offering the 50% match should they make it through those various steps. So what happens to the ones that are that currently are in the queue? So I'll mention two that I know are in my district, and that I want to know the impact on should this pass or not pass. And one that I'll mention I know is at 84th and Emmett. They are currently in the petition process, but have not been confirmed and have not gone through a protest period. Should this pass, what happens to a situation like that?
Bob Stubbe, Public Works. So again, we are working under a policy that has been in effect, as the mayor indicated, for over 100 years. So when we, as Public Works, and I'll refer to Heather and some of my other staff that go to these particular meetings, we're always communicating to them that the policy is that you as a homeowner have to pay 100%. It's only until you as a city council members that essentially take some type of a cost-sharing mechanism to city council for approval that it specifically identifies that this is the cost share. So if these projects are currently in the queue and that petitions have been given to them and that they haven't come in front of us and created a street improvement district or RMD, essentially that cost share to them is 100%.
Would they have to start over if it is approved?
I don't believe that they would have to start over. I mean, they're in the queue from the standpoint that they've been issued petitions. They're in all different steps from the standpoint. Some don't have the necessary percentage to allow it to move forward. But no, they would not have to start over, in my opinion.
So they would be considered, for the next application period, and they'd already be well on their way to submitting that application.
Correct.
89th Circle is another example that actually is problematic at the moment because this is a fairly complicated process for neighbors to understand, and I think it is confusing for many as they go through a petition process, then our protest period, and then actual design and what that might mean, and sometimes that changes people's opinions. They have petitioned, they have gone through the protest period, they're in design phase at this point. What happens to them in this case? If this policy is approved, I presume, they're already kind of through the process, and so that would move forward, right?
Yeah, that particular one, if I recall correctly, is that the district's been created. There's been a cost share mechanism for that, and a design contract was awarded. They're going through the process. In fact, I think they're close to being 100% complete on design. And so that particular project would go out for bids, and then those bids would have to come back to you for consideration before we move forward with construction. But those particular property owners on that street already know that there's been a cost share that's been approved for those residents.
Mm-hmm. Should they change how they want to do it, though, and they may, if this policy, if adopted, means they start over and then would be subject to the different qualifications here, which might be 50% match or 25% match.
Yeah, I think that if the bids come before you and those particular property owners object to wanting to move forward, and you concur with them and say, no, you're not going to move forward with that particular project, then I think it goes all the way back. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they have to wait 2 years before they can go through that process again.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Sorry. I have somebody shaking their head no. Heather, would you come up, please?
That was my next question, because I don't think we currently say people must wait 2 years, but this new policy does say they must wait 2 years if they start over.
Heather Tippy, Paris Public Works. We did a little research on the 2-year wait period that's outlined, and that was specifically referring to districts that were protested out. This district, North 89th Circle, was not protested out. It did, in fact, move forward. So, law can correct me if I'm wrong, but at this time, we understand that to mean that they would not have to wait 2 years to go back through the process.
Okay. Does that need to be clarified in this document then, too, going forward?
Again, Heather Tippy, Paris Public Works, my understanding is that the way the language in the policy reads is reflective of the statutes in the municipal code. So a 2-year wait period will only apply if a district were protested out during that 30-day protest period, which would immediately follow creation.
Okay. I don't think that's entirely spelled out in what we had before us today, but I suppose that adds to the verbal record here. I know others have questions. I'll yield the floor for now.
Thank you. Mr. Jerem.
Thank you, Mr. President, and many of the questions have been answered. And ultimately, I have a number of comments to make. What my vote comes down to is the disappearance of the funding source for those who seek street improvement districts moving forward if this does not pass. As the mayor, I think, said 3 times, the CIP funding source is contingent in a legally binding document that we've all passed that says the funding for these street improvement districts at the 50% cost share is dependent upon passing a policy. So, being the lawyer that I am in my other job, I asked the lawyers, is this really, are we really that handcuffed? And the answer is yes. That's the contingency of those bonds for using them for that purpose. As the mayor said, they could be reallocated for other transportation-related expenses, but they can't be used for this. So that's, in the end of the day, why I will be voting yes on this today. But that does not mean that it is with any enthusiasm. I don't think you heard any enthusiasm from the mayor. She's been very candid to acknowledge the scope of the problem is massive. The frustration that you acknowledged, Mayor and Councilman Festerson, is real. It's palpable. It's widespread. There's a 300-mile problem here. And many people, particularly those I think of and walking around this, knocking on doors in the Christ the King neighborhood, some of them just think they need a couple potholes filled. And for some reason, because of the rating system that makes no sense to them, they struggle to get that done. There was an exception made, so thank you for that. The people who live in the Loveland neighborhood, Mr. Gadzinski and your neighbors, heck, you have a very unique situation, a very frustrating situation with the 1100 block of Ridgewood in particular. That is just a mess. And the problem is, sensing that the Public Works Director was sympathetic to your cause, I approached him about, well, let's just use the authority that you have under the ordinance to force this one in, so to speak, as something that's required because of the need, like he has shown willingness to do in another project recently that's tied to the 78th Street reconstruction. And what was pointed out to me, and Mr. Stubbe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is precedent for partnering with the West Side School District. When they redid the Oakdale School recently, they partnered with the city to reconstruct a street. And it was his preference that he not exercise the discretion immediately to install the new street on that 1100 block, but to wait and partner with the school district at the time they do the school before he does that. Is that basically correct, Mr. Stubbe?
That is correct, and I'd like to add one more thing, Bob Stubbe, Public Works. The other thing that we understand is that some of those properties in that particular area, and you can maybe allude to it better than I can, but I understand the school district is looking at pursuing some of those other properties. So we recognize that there's a potential that what the school district is proposing to do at that location is to expand what they currently have there today, and it would be our request when they come in and show us what they're proposing that also access to that property be improved from what it is today, because I think everybody's aware of the fact that access is right off of Pacific, and that causes a major issue also. And so that's part of the reason why we want to see what they're proposing on doing before we actually move forward with anything in that area.
And when the construction of that whole redevelopment occurs, the equipment that'll be associated and used in that would destroy essentially or compromise the integrity of a street built to current standards if we were to, quote, force this in now. Now, that doesn't mean that causes me any sense of satisfaction or anything other than feeling and agreeing with completely your frustration, because you're dealing with the problem every single day right now. And this is something in the future with a question mark date that the city's saying this will get done in time, but you know, I don't know your age. I'm 53, and how many years that is, I don't know. So that's another reason why I don't have any great satisfaction. But I do think it would be a unwise use of city funds at this point to install a street there, knowing there's construction coming that would undermine that integrity. Another thing I would say is that now's the season when council members can begin right after the new year to submit our own CIP requests to the administration moving forward. And it's my expectation in meeting with the mayor that her mind is still open with regard to the level of funding for these things. She's shown prudence in other areas with pilot projects of various sorts, and I view her entry-level commitment here as a test as to how this works. And she has assured me that that is, in fact, what her intention is. Let's see how this goes. I'm open to considering additional options. And as I see it, my request will be, well, let's, in the next out year of the CIP, increase the funding level to a point where there might be more than one block of a poverty-stricken area that might qualify for the 100% match. And in terms of the CDBG, I completely agree that really you can't, until you get applications and you know how the proposals are submitted and how they're scored and rated, we won't know what is available and not there. So 300 miles is something that I think the 300,000, if I could find it, would have been 3 million, but I do know from other small starts that have grown to big things in different areas that we've worked together on, one of whom's on the agenda today, seated to your right, is why in the end of the day I'm coming down as a yes vote on this, even though it's a very, very modest beginning. It's a very important continuity in terms of those who are in the queue who are proposing street improvement districts. And those would go away on Ridgewood. So that's where I am.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I know we have had a lot of questions and answers, so I'll try to stay away from them. Some of them were my questions. But I think some of the confusion starts when I first hear from a constituent and they're like, hey, we have this road. We need some work done on it. And I'm like, sure, no problem. And we look it up, and it's a unapproved road, and I have to unfortunately tell them that no longer with the policy that we're under are we taking care of these roads. And their first statement is, wait a second, the roads are the city's responsibilities. And I have to agree with them because they are. And it's I didn't set this up, but the three people you heard opposed to this are exactly the three different categories that I've brought forward over time about this plan. You hear 300 lane miles, that's just not the truth. You hear $300 million, well, that's just not the truth. And the reason being is because you'll hear from different percentages of this unimproved lane miles that you have. You have a third of them that don't want you to come on their street. You'll walk around with a petition, and it's just not going to happen. They like that mystique of the unapproved road in their area. They like that it slows people down. They like that people don't drive on it because it is so bad, believe it or not. So there's that group that are like, no, we don't want our roads fixed. And then you have that other group that are like, hey, wait a second. You've taken care of these city roads for 100 years. Where have you been? Why aren't you coming back? And that's the group that we should be making exceptions for. We should be going out and maintaining these roads with the able bodies we have, the city employees who are guaranteed under that union contract a 40-hour work week with that equipment and the material that's paid for. This is what we're supposed to do. And then you have that other part of the equation where there's just unfortunately some people who can't afford to maintain their roads. If they had some extra money, I guarantee they are not going to put it into their roads. So you have some different parts to this. It isn't that big number you hear. And I promise you, if somebody walked through that door right now with a check to pay for this bill, it wouldn't happen in a year. It probably wouldn't happen in 30 years. It's just not possible. We see it every day with the city contracts we have now. We get one bid. You think that we could really, if we had the money, fix these roads? It's not going to happen. Let's just be honest. So it is a problem. And I'm not against this total policy, but I think I'm against the amount that it started with because there's been some cost avoidance over the last 6 years. If we haven't been to these roads that we maintained for 100 years, I haven't heard anybody say, well, here's the cost savings from that. We didn't have to hire a certain more employees, or we saved in this end. I've never heard the cost sharing or the cost savings that we had from neglecting this area. So are we saying, well, let's give you this $300,000 to do a block because we feel this is what you saved over the last 6 years? I don't think so. I think we saved a lot more money than that. So we can do this, and we can do it without a tax increase very easily. What we need to do is stop handcuffing our city employees on what the job is that they have in front of them, and that's to fix the roads, no matter what they are, concrete, asphalt, paver, unimproved, it doesn't matter. That's our responsibility, and that's, at the end of the day, what it should be. I got some pictures, because you'll hear, well, wait a second, Vinny, this is just, if you're going to go into these roads that we've been neglecting for 6 years, it's just a temporary fix. Well, fast forward about 2 months from now, when we have the freeze thaw happen, I promise you every chuck hole we fix is temporary. So I'm going to show you a picture that I took, if the clerk could put it up on the board, please, of how this is not a temporary fix. This is something that the citizens of Omaha expect and they appreciate. But the fact is we haven't been there lately, so now they're wondering. So the first picture I took was when I had got a call from a constituent saying, hey, I want to sell my house. I have this one hole in front of my driveway. Would you please come fix it? And you could see this is the dictionary definition of like a patch quilt street. You can see it's been patched and fixed and extra material and for I don't know how many years. But the funny thing is, that's all they want is that one hole fixed. They want you to do your job as a city. So this picture was taken November of 2017. I did ask throughout the process, hey, I got this one constituent, can you please help them out? No, that's not our policy. Go to the next level? No, that's not our policy. And I'm shaking my head the whole time. I'm thinking, wait a second, what do you mean we can't fix this city road? This is our responsibility. I'm going to keep saying it's a responsibility of ours because it is. Finally, it gets fixed. It looks like this. And you can show the next picture. 7 months later, I drive by, and we all have a copy of this. There it is. That's simple fixed. Now, that fix didn't cost any more money for the residents of Omaha. Their taxes didn't go up because of it. This is a city employee with asphalt that was already purchased that possibly they didn't have to empty out at the end of the day. Because you're also here, well, go to the next picture, because this is what infuriates me about the exceptions that we say we can't do it. That's not Mount St. Helens, I promise. That's a district yard in the city of Omaha with asphalt that's been dumped out, whether it's at the end of the day. If you got to figure we have 4 or 5 street maintenance yards and they have 5 or 6 asphalt crews that are out, they're going to have leftovers. It's just like concrete. If you don't get it out of the truck, you got to get it out. That's just the bottom line. So if you don't put it on these city streets, of ones like the picture you just see, where this is what the residents and the people expect at no extra cost, this is where it ends up. Now you hear, no, Vinny, that's just not true. We use this in the winter. You can go to the next picture. Here's another district yard. Please. This is asphalt that could be on our city streets. And go to the next picture, please. These are different district yards, different pictures of what we do not put on our roads that are our responsibility. I don't have an explanation for it. I just know it's not right. I've showed you the pictures that it does last. There's a reason that it should go on a street for a person, regardless of their poverty level. It doesn't matter what part of the city they live in, this asphalt should be on the road. Because if you try to mix this up in the winter and put an additive to it, I promise you're just not going to get the quality you would, even if it's at the end of the day and that's cold. And you're just not going to get it in the winter. It's not going to stick. It's going to last even less in the wintertime than it will in the summer when you put that out. And you can notice some pictures have sun by them. I've got a lot of these pictures. They're all the same. I could have picked any one of them, and it still disgusts me. So there's one other part, too, that we haven't heard. Thank you very much. I don't think anybody needs to see them anymore. And it's the part of what we see every day, or not every day, every Tuesday just about at the city council. We have Omaha moving in the right direction. We have so many developments and so many amazing things that are happening right now, I literally have to write them down. But here's the problem. As you spend all this money and the city invests all this money, you're inviting people to the city that you're trying to move forward, and heaven forbid they get off a track and get a few miles away from where all this amazing stuff's happening, because you're going to run into third world roads. And I can say that I've been to third world countries. They look exactly like they do here. There is no reason for this. We've been taking care of these roads forever, up until recently. This happened before the mayor was elected. I appreciate that the policy forward is I won't say a step, but I'll say headed in the right direction, but it's still not enough. I have a lot of unapproved roads in my area, and I'm tired of getting the crumbs. We deserve better. So you hear these numbers, and you get scared by them. Oh my gosh, like the emails I got, I'm not sure where they came from, of, please, Vinny, don't raise my taxes. No, we can do this. We can fix your roads. We can go back to that part that really need fixed without doing that. We're going to have to do something with some of them roads that do need fixed, I agree. So I'm not against this total policy. I almost feel it as a slap in the face about the amount of money. So in case you didn't know, I'll say it one more time. This is the city's responsibility to fix these roads, and I'll be voting no. It's a thanks, but no thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Harding?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to applaud the mayor for taking this challenging issue on. It's something that has been neglected for a number of years, and I agree that there is a need for the policy. It's warranted and needed. I appreciate the creative thinking as to how to address areas of higher poverty. But I also think a compelling argument has been made that in situations where an SID built the road to the standard demanded by the then jurisdiction, and then and pays a special assessment for the roads, and then are annexed, I think a case can be made that the city should continue to maintain those streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melton.
Yes, I want to say that I think this is a great start. We've needed this policy for quite a while. I know that the committee has met and then reconvened just since we denied the last policy. I appreciate the fact, Mayor, that you took the recommendations that came out of that last meeting, incorporated them into this one. I would agree that I'm not so sure that the Elkhorn Street issue should be something that would keep us from passing this policy, because I don't know that this policy necessarily mandates that those streets should be defined as city streets based on the facts of that particular case. So I'm going to be in support of this policy. For one, I do think it's a good start, and I think that the mayor has shown us that she does do these kind of pilot programs, and if they work, she gets behind them. And we've seen that again with somebody else that is here. I was thinking of that earlier, as Councilman Durham said, where it started out with about 50,000 and now we're at 650,000. So I think when something works and when we see that it works, then we can start adding more and more money to it. And that's what I would like to see with this policy. So, and again, I know that people that live in Loveland, I'm not so sure voting against this policy is necessarily the right thing. I understand your issue of maybe wanting more, right? But maybe we start with this because that's not going to maybe preclude something like what you're asking for from going forward in the future. So I appreciate the opponents that have come down, but I'm not necessarily sure that just because we pass this policy, that some of the issues that you spoke of can't be addressed moving forward. And I hear both of you. So with that, I do think, and again, I just want to make a clarification. We do fill potholes on unimproved streets up to the point where the streets then just can't take the potholes anymore. So there's a number of unimproved streets. We continue to fill the potholes. I just wanted to correct that it's not, we don't fill any of them. Mr. Stubbe, am I stating that correctly? Because I think
Stubbe, you are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I stated earlier, we've been at this particular game for at least 1 or 2 years, and I know going through this on some of the areas in my district, listening to people struggling, well, is it going to be 25, 50, none, all this. I think this will cause that to, at least people will know going in the cost sharing. But so I will be supporting this. But I also hear what my buddy over to my
Best friend.
Yeah, best friend. Maybe not today. I see a person who's really concerned about what's going on, and he's what you call sort of that gut level stuff. You know, a lot of times we talk about up here, but it's that gut level, and that's what I think he's coming from, is saying, hey, there's something that just doesn't seem right here. And so I do appreciate you going out and taking the pictures and explaining what this means to you. And I think when the 7 of us do get together and talk about where perhaps more money could come from, if possible, in the future, I think we should probably listen to you. Sort of like that gnat that just won't go away.
Right. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more lights. I guess there may be a motion coming here, but let me weigh in on this a little bit and make a couple of comments, if I would. First of all, I understand Mr. Palermo's concern about not having enough in his or my district, quite frankly, to address the benign neglect that has gone on in our districts specifically for, we talk about a few years, but in my district, it has been about 50. So I do understand Mr. Palermo's concern and the amount of money that is being associated with this is a paltry amount of money. But the other side of what I have to think about, you know, when we're looking at this policy is what Mr. Jerem said about the number of pilot projects we have started. We talk about Heartland Workforce Solutions, but there's also Step Up. There's also the truancy program and a number of others where we started rather small, and as those projects demonstrated their ability to be successful, it forced us, quite frankly, to look at how do we put more money into Heartland, how do we put more money into Step Up, how do we put more money into helping our children make it to school every day. So, you know, I'm kind of torn from the perspective, and I do plan to support this, quite frankly, but I don't want you to think that the concerns that have been in my district for a very, very long time and has been the subject of a number of things that have gone on that have been unfair in my district for a long period of time, including redlining and a number of other things. But the other side of me says this is a pilot, and I think it is incumbent upon us as council members and the mayor, it is incumbent upon us, if this policy begins to bear fruit, we have to find ways to put more money into it. So for me, I do understand the benign neglect. It has been a severe problem in my district for a long time that is starting to turn around, primarily because of some of these funding efforts that we have put in place. So I will be supporting it, but I do understand the benign neglect that has gone on. I do understand that we have an obligation to do what we can to catch people up if we can. And so I'll be supporting this, but I'm also going to be looking at, in the next budget cycle and with the CIP, that we do look at prioritizing some areas and looking for ways to increase the funding. So with that, I don't have any more comments.
Move for the approval if there's no more lights.
There are no more lights.
Okay.
Second. It's moved and seconded to approve item 6. There are no more lights. Roll call.
Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 6 is approved, 5-2. Item 7, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for V Mertz located at 1022 Howard Street.
Public hearing agenda item number 7 is today. Proponents, please.
John Panzer, 22608 Haskell Street, Elkhorn. I am the, Mr. President, this is my first appearance in front of the council, my first liquor license application.
So you're just here to answer any questions
here to
that we
answer
might
any
have.
questions,
That's the way. All right. Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Moved and seconded to approve item 7. No lights. Roll call.
Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 7 is approved, 7-0. Item 8, an application to consider a Class I liquor license for Noah Brides located at 1419 South 13th Street, Suite 102.
Public hearing agenda item number 8 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, my name is Rachel Campbell. I'm the owner of Noah Brides. We're at 1419 South 13th Street, Suite 102, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Second, roll call.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 8 is approved, 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the city council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the city council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the city council rules of order.
The public hearing on agenda items numbers 9 and 10 were held on December 11th, 2018. Is there a motion? Moved and seconded to approve 9 and 10. Roll call.
Palermo. Festerson. Harding. Jerem. Melton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 9 and 10 are approved, 7-0.
The public hearing on agenda items numbers 11 through 33 are today. If you wish to address the city council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent.
Good afternoon. Erin Porterfield, 5752 Ames. I serve as the Executive Director for Heartland Workforce Solutions, and I'm definitely a proponent of item 28. Just have a brief comment of thanks to the Council and Mayor Stothert for continued support of the effort that we are working towards for Heartland Workforce Solutions. We've experienced a lot of innovation powered by these dollars that we can use for innovation differently than the regulations that are required through Department of Labor, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Before I introduce Keith for a couple of quick stats about our successes, I wanted to let you know that there are some things that we're working on the horizon that you power through, in part, your operating support through this grant. One thing is the local regional planning effort. This is something that is a systemic document that drives strategy amongst our workforce partners, bringing together people who serve folks who are disabled, folks who are veterans, folks who are youth aging out of foster care, not in school or employed, and many other partners, systemically working together for common outcomes, mainly work at an income that is sustainable and helps to ladder them up. So that's one thing that we're working on. Another is the RFP for our one-stop workforce system. That's our American Job Center that you note on 57th and Ames, and also our spot at Latino Center of the Midlands. We're RFPing those services for the one-stop and also for the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act programs that serve youth, adults, and dislocated workers. So stay tuned for how we proceed with that. We will have a new contract in place, whether it's the same provider or some combination of others, by July 1 of this year. And then one of the cool things, item number 3 that we'll be working on in this next year is actually with Arun Agarwal, who has the bowling alley across the parking lot for us. He's developing something of a innovative workforce campus. So we don't know what will happen next there, but what we do know is that that building is going to turn into something nifty with workforce partners, with training program, and linked to our American Job Centers. And that's really neat because it's in the heart of one of the highest unemployment areas of our area, and it is a public-private partnership, so stay tuned on that. I'd like to introduce to you Keith Station, who is really at the helm of the CRED initiative. And over the last few years, the success of this strategic partnership amongst our network providers, school systems, public leaders, et cetera, it's really led by Keith Station and the partners. So I'd like to make a couple of comments through him.
Sure. Good afternoon. Keith Station, Director of Business Relations for Heartland Workforce Solutions, 5752 Ames Avenue. Thank you again to the Council, President Gray, for allowing us a few minutes to come before you to talk about the good things we're doing with our initiative. It's called Career Readiness to Eliminate Disparities, or CRED initiative. So when I say CRED, I'm referring to the overarching grant. I would echo Erin's comments and thank the mayor and her administration team. I thank Amber for her technical assistance with making sure that we are operating the grant properly and in the spirit of what it was intended to do. The credit initiative is a targeted strategy. It's a few things. It's funding resources. It's also a research study. It's also a deep partnership with Metropolitan Community College's Workforce Innovation Division. It is partnership with other workforce development stakeholders to really do a couple of key things to help individuals who are currently not ready for high demand, high skill, high wage employment opportunities to get those skills and to make that connection. We also serve businesses. We are a resource for employers who are looking for talent, and there are quite a few employers who are looking for talent. There's some 17,000 jobs available, give or take, in this area, and there's less than one person available for those jobs. So our job is to make sure that industry has a solution to their needs. This past year, just really quickly, 767 people earned the National Career Readiness Certificate, and that is 81% of the individuals who took the assessment last year, and that's up quite a bit, and that's due to, large in part due to preemptive opportunities to help people skill up and be prepared to take advantage of the Career Readiness Certificate. And so we're very proud of that 81% conversion rate statistic. 54% of participants in our programs are from the targeted zip codes, those of highest poverty and unemployment across our community. And in one of the innovative programs we developed is called the Career Placement Pipeline program, and that really is an intentional way to make that connection between industry and individuals who hold that career readiness certificate. And we're seeing a 69% retention rate through 6 months for that new program, and that's a good thing because that's favorably comparative to 46, 47, 48% relative to industry in general nationally. So those are signs that the things we are doing are working and are a solution to what industry said are pain points for them. In 2019, we'll continue to do the things we've learned over the last few years. Additionally, we will work to provide a resource for credentials and certificates, those that are needed specifically to go to work. We've planned for that. We will have resources to develop a customer relationship management tool for businesses. We need a way to capture and follow up with businesses when we communicate with them amongst our network of partners. And last, and certainly not least, one of the things that we're excited about getting our arms around is the reentry space. There's a lot of different organizations and reentry related agencies who are doing great work to serve individuals who are reentering into our communities, inside and on the outside. And so we're excited to get busy doing more intentional work with those groups. A couple of things we will do is be conveners for the project that Category 1 Consulting is working with, and also other organizations who have welcomed us inside to administer programs and offer credentials and do employability skills training. We will identify gaps that exist today. There are a few key gaps, and we'll also adopt systemic approaches to working with employers, again, reentry related service agencies and workforce stakeholders to, again, make that match. So that is our plan for next year, and we're excited about doing that. Not present, but again, very key to the initiative are our partners at MCC. Metropolitan Community College's Workforce Innovation Division is huge in helping us to deliver this program to job seekers and to businesses across our community. And we can't wait to get to work doing that next year. So again, I would thank you to the council, thank you President Gray for your support, and for those opportunities to connect to industry and to all the resources that you all have, and we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't necessarily want to close the public hearing, but I know there were a couple of things. We have some other people that want to, other items, people that want to speak as well.
Good afternoon, Diane Duran, 455 North 10th Street. I'm here for item 29 to answer any questions. First of all, I'd like to thank President Gray, and I'd like to thank all of the council members for their support of MECA and the work that is being done there. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. With that, we will close the public hearing. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, first I'd like to address my comments to the Heartland Workforce Solutions. You all know, this is kind of a started off as very modest foray into an area where the council recognized the city's partnership with the state was not working. The state had taken over the program for workforce development in the Tri-County area, and a recognition in that contract, when I first saw it, was eye-popping. It was simply numbing to recognize in a contract that at least 60 cents of every dollar we received from our federal workforce development money was going to the state for administrative overhead costs, not into the programming. And the effort that grew out of that was to study with partners whether we could take that back, what it might look like, the formation of this nonprofit in partnership with the state, with the city, with our surrounding counties, with the Chamber of Commerce, with industry, with Metro, and others. And what came out of it was this nonprofit. And the places that you've gone and the levels that you've taken it to was incrementally, and it was with embracing the notion that you could and were willing to accept challenges to prove the value of the investment, and that you could deliver return on that investment. And with each incremental step along the way, you've delivered. And so kudos to you. It's a program near and dear to me that it's a big part of when people ask me in your 9 years, what are you most proud of? It is in the top 1 or 2 every time. So the need is immense, and it grew out of my sidekick here to my right, driving around the district and actually seeing able-bodied people sitting on the porch in northeast Omaha who had asked contractors working on the street in front of their homes how they could go about looking for a job. They wanted to work, and they were told, no, we don't need you. So people who wanted to work in areas of 45% unemployment was something that really was mind-blowing. So to where you've gotten today, I see the next big frontier for growth in your project and experiment is in this reentry area. If we can get skills to people who are coming out of our prisons and reduce the recidivism and make people productive citizens through a meaningful job that pays a rate that they can survive on, we will reduce the recidivism rate. And some of the pilot programs in the reentry training areas have shown that they have very high success rates. So we know there are models that work. And what I like about what you'll be doing over this next year is taking a holistic look and evaluating the different models and showing us in report form where the best bang for our buck is, because we do have limited resources, and even though they have been growing, I think the most prudent thing to do with the investment dollars that we commit would be to go where the money's wisest and produces the best results. And that's not only our fiduciary responsibility, the taxpayers who are funding this, but gives the participants who are entering the programs, who don't know the good from maybe the ones that need improving, who are staking their futures on the outcome, we want to give them the best chance to succeed. So I wish you well on that, and again, thank you for all you're doing. The other item I wanted to comment briefly on is a constituent of mine who's proven herself as an incredible addition to the MECA board over the previous term that she served. She was the mayor's appointment last time, and through her professionalism and acumen on the board, her collegiality with others, her developing and championing under her leadership an annual public report that we receive, to accolades coming from CVB, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, on what you're doing with them and partnering. I thought it was incumbent upon us in this time of huge riverfront redevelopment that we have continuity in leadership. So not only have you earned, in my view, reappointment, no-brainer decision there as far as I'm concerned, but it would be foolhardy not to keep you on, given your knowledge of what's going on there and your skill sets for following through on that in your next term. So I want to wish you well and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wensley, could I have you come up just for a minute, please? And maybe while you're coming up, I wanted to just, on item number 33, a lot of hard work has gone into that, and thanks to President Gray and Dr. Thompson and for really kind of spearheading this and working with the chamber. So Wensley, if you could just briefly kind of explain the program and how we got to where we were and what the goal is.
Absolutely. Winsley Durand, Greater Omaha Chamber, 808 Conagra Drive. So we've been working on this for quite a long time with the leadership of some city council people. Thank you very much. And it is, I guess, the evolution of the REACH program over time and growing the program in a way that it is most beneficial not only for the city but also for the general contractors and for the small and emerging contractors that participate. This proposed software that we're looking at putting together will help be a feedback and improvement tool that will provide ratings for the small emerging contractors on each of their projects. It'll be a collaborative effort whereby we have a number of different entities that we're talking to. Metropolitan Community College has agreed to participate as well as the city, and we've been in discussions with Omaha Public Schools. But where each of these contractors, when they get finished with the project, will have 10 categories on which they will receive feedback. Some of the challenges to their growth in the past has been that they would complete a project and they would just go on and they would not receive feedback either on what they did well or what they really needed to improve. And so this will help provide that feedback, but will also be aggregated and be able to be provided to other general contractors that will be looking at it to help them do their due diligence, to help find the right capacities. Sometimes a contractor is not a good or a bad contractor, but they are maybe right or not right for a particular project based on their size and scope. And this will help match up those contractors more accurately and help be a sort of honor roll for those contractors that are really doing well and help highlight them and get them greater utilization, help them grow their capacities, make investments and making growth in employment.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank you, Wensley, and especially Dr. Thompson and President Gray for their work on this. If there aren't any other lights, I'll move 11 through 33.
Been moved and seconded. There are a couple of lights, and
Oh,
before I
sorry.
take the vote out, but moving and seconded is okay. Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, you've been sitting up there a long time beside Diane, so I thought maybe I need to recognize you. You were a good parent with your children at one of my schools. I just thought I'd throw that out to keep you awake. Thank you.
That's Mr. Pauls for you. I wanted to say a couple of things as well before we vote. One is I'm with Councilmember Jerem. Whenever I talk about Heartland Workforce Solutions, my chest is way out here because you guys are doing just magnificent work. And with the dollars that you've gotten, though they haven't been probably what we would like to do, you have used those dollars most expeditiously, and the things that you have put together and the operation that you have put together is, I think, something that other people can learn from, other cities can learn from. And so I wanted to thank you all personally for the work that went into all of this. As Mr. Jerem stated earlier, this started out, first of all, we had to get it back from the state so that we could do some innovative things with it, and we've gotten that done, and what you all have done has been nothing short of amazing in my judgment, and I wish you luck and hope that you will continue. Secondly, Ms. Melton and I spent considerable time working with Mecca when there were some issues that we had to address. And I think both of us can do the same thing and say, you know, we got it right. And one of the things we got right was adding Diane to the board. And Diane, your work has been spectacular. The work of the board has been, you know, borders on unbelievable. If you look at other cities and what they do and how much the city has to fund their operation, and looking at how you all operate and don't ask us for anything for the most part, I think it's a testament to the ability of the CEO as well as the ability of the board to really get things done. And finally, you know, I also would have to thank, a lot of work has gone into this SEB program. And we have wanted more than anything else to make sure that we get it right. And this was one of the areas where we saw that some improvement was needed. And I want to thank Winsley for stepping up to the plate and helping us get that done. So with that, I wanted to make sure that I thanked all of you as well, because I think what you're doing is marvelous work, work that is necessary and needed in our community, and work that is going to bear fruit for our children and our grandchildren if we continue to do it right. So with that, there are no more lights. It's been moved and seconded to approve all of the items under the resolution agenda. Roll call.
Palermo. Yes. Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Yes. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Yes. Pauls. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 11 through 33 are approved, 7-0. Item 34, a resolution to approve the payment of $239,670.63 to the Nebraska Medical Center and UNMC physicians for the necessary medical treatment provided to John Ciazzo.
Public hearing on agenda item number 34 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Pauls, did you have your light on?
No, you just.
I'm sorry.
It didn't go off.
Okay. Mr. Harding.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Mr. Harding had his light on.
He moved the approval.
There are a couple of lights on.
First of all, I want to thank UNMC for forgiving half of the bill. And secondly, as some of my colleagues have stated, that they might have to hold their nose when they do this. I think this is unfathomable that we are doing this. I understand we have to do it, but I think this is something that we should think of when we're talking with our state senators and working something through the unicameral, so situations like this are not at the expense of our taxpayers.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I guess I would echo that exactly what Councilmember Harding said. But I did want to add that if police are acting within good faith and not in a reckless manner, as this particular case was, then we as a city shouldn't be liable. Now, when the police are at fault, that's a different story. But let's rewind back. This was a person who was pulled over, and let's not forget, he shot a police officer, and he shot first. And I've heard a lot of feedback from people, and they're not happy, just like I'm not. There needs to be changes down in Lincoln on instances just like this, because this does not sit very well with me at all, especially for the police department community. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more lights. Well, Mr. Jerem.
Mr. Kratz, City Attorney, are you here today? Or
Paul Kratz, yes, I am.
does the city have any legal basis to avoid liability for payment?
No, we do not.
If we don't pay, would UNMC have to sue us to collect the money?
That would be their option, is to sue the city to collect the money, yes, sir.
Would they win?
Yes.
Would it be
And
even
I can
more
explain-
expensive to defend that lawsuit?
They'd probably go for the entire amount rather than the 50%. I can explain a little bit in that the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. That's been interpreted to mean that when somebody's in police custody, that police have to provide sufficient medical care our Nebraska Supreme Court in 1998 concluded that if they're in our custody and need medical care, that it's incumbent upon the city to pay for that medical care. That's where we're at.
Is there anything other than desire preventing the city, if we pay this bill, from filing a civil lawsuit against the individual to obtain a judgment against that person, even though that person may not have the means right now to pay? Maybe they do. Maybe they have assets that we don't know about through illicit criminal activity or enterprise. But I think the principle of this, to me, is if we're going to pay this, then why not at least make a statement that the city will have a judgment against you, and you will owe not only your debt if convicted in terms of your incarceration, but you will owe your debt to the city of Omaha taxpayers who paid your medical expenses because of your criminal behavior. So we could do that as an option, couldn't we, Mr. Kratz?
Yes, we could, and on occasion in the past we have done so when we knew that the defendant would have some financial ability to pay us. I don't know if that's the case with this individual or not.
Well, I would like to make a motion, because we're required by law and would be liable if we didn't, to approve payment of this expenditure, but on the condition that the city law department pursue a civil action to recover such funds paid.
Yeah, I'm not sure you need to make a motion. We'll do that in any event at your request.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Ms. Melton made the motion, or either way. Did you second the motion? She made it? Okay.
I think the request is what Paul says. I'd rather keep it clean. I mean, we want to go after him, but I don't want to have it mandated under passing this in the event they find out he has no money. I mean, just so that we don't waste further money. Yeah.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve item 34.
We need a second.
We need a second. I'll second it. Second.
No, Amy motioned to approve.
Amy motioned to approve.
Brinker second.
Brinken, did you second it? Okay.
I said I
I'm
will.
sorry, Mr. Hardy. I'm sorry, Mr. It's been moved and seconded. Okay. Thank you. Roll call.
Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls. Mr. President,
Yes.
item 34 is approved, 6-1.
Not enthusiastically, I might add. Next item, please.
Item 35, an ordinance to approve an agreement with the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Midlands in the amount of $83,829.
Public hearing on agenda item number 35 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 36, an ordinance to approve a corporate partnership agreement with the Center for Association Leadership in the amount of $146,000 for the period of April 1, 2019 through March 31st, 2022.
Public hearing on agenda item number 36 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing, opponent, please.
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue. I'd like to oppose it because I'd like to see that money go into the streets that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 37, an ordinance approving an agreement for Millwork District 1 LLC to complete the installation of Indiana Street between 11th and 13th Streets and to limit the city's expense allocation for the project to $400,000.
Public hearing on agenda item number 37 is today. Proponents, please.
Mr. President, members of council, Troy Anderson, Deputy Chief of Staff, Mayor's Office. This is an agreement authorizing the developer to proceed, if they so desire, with the improvements. And in response, the city would reimburse the developer those costs associated with the construction of Indiana Street, not to exceed $400,000. These funds are identified in the 2019 CIP and have been budgeted. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Luis Jimenez, 518 North 40th Street. Council members, I want to just say that I was very happy to see the developer, property owners for this project, BJ Morgan Real Estate, Ryan Ellis, came up to North Omaha 24th Street where we had a meeting at DRIPS, and he answered citizens' questions, neighborhood individuals. So there was a back and forth between the developer. So it was interesting to see that engagement. Once the scope of the project was explained, neighborhood association leaders, artists, and concerned citizens gave feedback relating to housing, real estate services, and inclusivity and overall development of the project. What types of retail are we talking about? I'm tired of coffee shops, said Precious McKesson, president of the North Omaha Neighborhood Alliance. She went on to reference national retailers like Target and Whole Foods who have reduced their traditional size to fit community needs. The demand for a grocery store, conventional or cooperative, to service the area was also discussed. So as this project moves forward, I do want to make a side note to you guys that this area is a food desert, and hopefully the developers and the people with the money bring food access to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. Anderson, if you would, just a question for you. This is a bit of an unusual line item, so I thought it's worth just having a little bit of dialogue about. Unusual in the respect that it's a bit of a one-off as it relates to a much larger redevelopment project and redevelopment agreement that we'll see, which typically is included in a redevelopment agreement and outlined as to why the city would be contributing to the creation of a new street in this case. In this instance, I believe what we have is that it's allowing the city to reimburse the developer to proceed with the construction of that street in the meantime, and that item will be then in the context of a redevelopment agreement later. Is that an accurate observation?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And that's a multi-million-dollar development that the city's participating in.
That's correct. Multi-million-dollar development, hundreds of thousands of square feet of office, mixed-use, residential, and a response to an area in the community that is in much need of redevelopment, for sure.
And what's the timeline of that redevelopment agreement coming back to the city council?
You know, I anticipate that redevelopment agreement will be coming in the next several months. I know we've been in negotiations with the owner developers, and so we're working through some of that right now.
Okay. And at that point is when we have the broader conversation about how it's going to look, what's going to go there, what types of mixed uses, and all those kind of things, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to that as well. I don't have a question for you. I just wanted to add a comment about the Millwork Commons and the work that is going on, that the city is involved in with this group. The potential there is huge. And we have been meeting on a regular basis with neighborhood associations around that area because there has been concerns, and those concerns are being addressed about, you know, issues like around Sienna Francis House and homelessness and some of those other things. And with this development and with the work that is going on constantly with Sienna Francis House and others, this has the potential of being a really, really great development for the northeastern part of our city. And so my thanks to those who are involved in that, and thank you and others with the administration that continue to work this project. It has unlimited potential, I think, and the development of it, I think, is critical for those of us, for those who live in the northeastern part of the city and those who are downtown. So thank you for the work that you do. There are no more lights. You've already spoken, Mr. Festerson, I think. There are no more lights, and I just blew it anyway. So I think we're done. Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh,
Non-action
oh,
items.
9 action items. I'm sorry.
Items 38 through 54 do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on an agenda for consideration.
A motion. Moved and seconded to adjourn. Roll call.
Palermo. Festerson. Harding.
Were you not sure?
Harding. Oh, thank you. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
And happy holidays to
Mr.
everybody.
President.
What, yes.
Thank you. Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at
Speak.
3:59. Let's start again now. Thank everyone.